Good afternoon, everybody. Well, first of all, let me thank you for staying until this time. Such a long day. I'm happy I'm seeing a greater audience than I even thought I would. My presentation is not going to be technical. It's as if I were going to tell a story. I'm not going to be technical today. We'll leave it for some other day. But let me tell you the reality of where we stand with residential botnets and especially with the proxies. Residential. I work for and let me tell you. First, let me tell you the story. This morning in the first panel, we are talking about the beginning of the internet for the oldest of you, including myself. Well, basically, I have my memories. The internet was created day before yesterday. I don't know whether anybody knows. I can say it. If it was in 1991, it's 34 years old. It's almost nothing. When I speak of the internet, I don't see it because of the origins, but from the commercial point of view or as users, I'm not saying it in the other sense. So, but the traffic has changed a lot. We started from just zero, and we started having more and more traffic to the extent that now it depends, well, depending on the source that you ask, but more than half the traffic in the internet is generated by bots. And this is very revealing. And the bots, there are machines where we've seen a different presentation. We receive a lot of mails and SMS, and that's being generated by bots. So, and that will get worse and worse because you don't need a person sending mail, but you just let it up to AI to do that work for you. This traffic that is being sent, not all of it is good, unfortunately. The botnets, there are good botnets, others are not so good, and others are just terrible. And another source says that more than 1/3 of the webnets are sending malicious traffic. And that makes me think, do you remember the movie Terminator? Terminator occurred in 2029. We only have 4 years. And at this pace, I don't know whether we'll reach 2029. Now, that was the internet. Now, if we speak of DDoS, the problem is closely related. DDoS is not new. DDoS, if we start thinking of how it evolved with time, well, the first 20 years of the 21st century, the DDoS was quite simple, sent from very few sources. The traffic came from very few countries, and the attacks were easy to detect. The vectors were easy, configuring thresholds. It was very easy to do things. But however, the problem dramatically changes when you use botnets. And botnets are not new, I repeat. In 1998, 2000, Yahoo, I don't know whether you remember that, Yahoo crashed many hours because of botnets, so it's not new at all. Now, botnets absolutely change the movie, because since 2022, that is when they started with the war between Russia and Ukraine, and the botnets are the number one vector of generating DDoS traffic in the internet. The botnets are used in geopolitical conflicts because, in addition to having weapons between one country and the other, well, in this case, they are used to harm the other country as much as you can. Attacking banks, for instance, the financial part. If I wanted to tear down gas plants or the internal departments of each country. The botnets is a traffic that is legitimate, if you think of it. What is a botnet? Well, this was explained earlier, but basically it's a compromised machine. There's a software that is making my machine do the normal thing, but it's using it to send malicious traffic to. Now, as I said, it's legitimate traffic. The only thing that is not legitimate is that my residential, I may be sending quick traffic. I like the NBA. I look at matches. I have my application through Google. I receive quick traffic, but there's no reason why I should send quick traffic. So but in the past there were just a few, and now there are thousands, and things get complicated. Not only do I have many more IPs active, but their bandwidth is much greater. In the past, at home, each of us would have a modem. As we started this morning, you had just a few megas. In the US, in Europe, you would handle a giga, then you have 10 gigas, and there's only one app that actually needs all that bandwidth, or being capable of using that. Do you know which it is? A part of a speed test. DDoS. It's the only thing that can use the 10 gigas that you have. And this is going worse and worse, because basically this you can't dominate. We went from thousands to million devices, and in addition they are influenced, generated, manipulated. There are not even people behind them, but it's done through AI. So going back to the residential proxies, the topic today, as I had no idea what a residential proxies was, so I asked artificial intelligence, Gemini. It's the cousin of our VPN. Somebody, knowingly or not, their machine is part of one of these networks, the residential proxy. Somebody is using my IP to send traffic. I have somebody I know that can't buy in Costco because he went into a proxy residential. Somebody used his IP maliciously, and Costco blocked it. So he can no longer buy that. Somebody is usurping my IP to use it as fraud or as a virus. What are the proxy use cases of the proxy servers? Well, let's say that we have a different variety, from where we could say the so-called legal or normal to those that are not so legal, and those that are not legal at all, and the color reflects that. Residential proxies are used, for instance, for airlines, hotels. If I use an IP that has nothing to do with me, to understand what the rest are doing. Or even for ads. If I want to know that the ads that I have in a certain country are the ones that should, because it doesn't make sense if I live in the United States and I receive an ad from China, because I won't buy there. That's not my market. Then we have those that are not so legal, more indeterminate. They are used for other uses. For instance, sometimes they are limited. For instance, the number of tennis shoes that I can buy because there's a limited edition, or the number of tickets for a concert. Or you can use it, and this is new, you can use it for artificial intelligence. And then we have, you can use them as a fraud. We've seen how these networks are used to deceive, to draw benefits from other people, or even for DDoS. That's what we've seen lately. This is not one thing or the other. Here we have examples. What I said, I may have my IP that someone is using for phishing, for instance, but at some time my IP can be put in a site where they already know me, and let's say I know that from now on I can't make money, but I can damage, and it is using it as a virus. How do I enter here? How can I put an end to a problem like this? How do you create the networks of proxy servers? And um, so, as I said earlier, most users or most people at a residential at a proxy, they don't know it. Let me give you an example. For instance, you are somewhere, you don't have Wi-Fi, you're outside, you're abroad, and you see a Wi-Fi at the airport, at the hotel, or whatever. And you download. No, you don't download. You just see a long list of information, and you have to read the whole list, and then you have to click on the box where you say I accept. Be careful, because there are many cases that may end up there of a VPN, where basically if I like football, I live in the United States, but I like football, I don't want to pay, and I download a VPN. I see the champions on Wednesday, but I've just installed a software that I had no idea that they were using it for this, or this has been mentioned in a presentation. It's people that will resell their bandwidth. Certainly there are many that recognize flow. Flow. How do you think that you can offer service free of charge in my town? Nobody will give you €5 if you give them €4. So, and then you have a way you can gain a malware also out of ignorance. Maybe because you are buying devices that already bring their malware installed, and this is a reality. There are quite a few companies, especially from China. Many use Android, and basically, I just bought a botnet that can be used as a proxy server, and this the same. This was announced by the FBI, and Google, of course, is behind this. They were the first to say, let's take legal action. We knew this. I'll give you some more information, but we are speaking of more than 10 million devices outside there that are being used for this. One of the botnets is the back box. So let me go back to the residential proxy. So all these companies that are generating these networks, we've seen the use cases. Well, basically, all of them sell services. They're saying basically there are about 200, 300. We went from very few to 200, 300, and basically all of them offer the same. That is, I have X number of IPs. All my IPs are epic because I I got them from people that read the 15 pages that you haven't read, and they are real pages, etc. And they give you a lot of information of companies that use them. If they use European standards, GDPR or CCPA from California Protection Action, that are standards that nobody understands. But if you see that there, it sounds serious. But the truth is that we are talking about networks that have over 100 million that are ethically, well, were obtained ethically. That's not true, but they are the fastest. We also have another type, and this is something that people started to see last year. There are companies offering these networks simply to train AI models. This was one of the use cases that I mentioned earlier. Here we limited the use to very few. There are not so many companies using this type of networks. Okay, so where are these residential proxies? If we look at a heat map in the world, there are 2 points highlighted there. Number 1, world champion is Brazil. And number 2, very close, although with a small difference, is the United States. So let's the guts, deep field. I'm not much because this is not a product presentation. We use the secure genome, that is a tracer, as if it were Google on steroids, a bit stronger than Google. Basically, it's tracking the complete internet and labeling based on the information that it can generate. The IPs, he's giving them a color, and the color has a meaning. Orange means that the machine has an open vulnerability. You can know what the hardware, the software that it has. I see that it's a MikroTik router that I mentioned several times with an very ancient software. Nobody has patched it, but I've never seen an attack, so I put it orange. Now, if that MikroTik router, I see that it's attacking others because I have points open in the internet for it to be attacked. So I have examples of clients attacking me, etc. Then I put it in red. Not only do I know you, I've seen you in the past in an attack in the last 48 hours, 2 days. So this, I mentioned how it works because 11 months ago, this is June, it's absolutely valid. These colors here, sort of purple, this is the identification of the proxy servers at the time. We managed to see real attacks where there was a little participation of the proxy servers. If we see this today, and this is much more real. This doesn't mean that all the attacks come from proxy servers. Please don't misunderstand me, but we always see that many of those attacks, a great component comes from botnets that actually come from a network of proxy servers. And as I said, this is our everyday thing. And the question that you may ask, what does this gentleman do here telling me all this? What can you do from the point of view of Nokia Deep Field? What do we do with all this information? Deep Field has invested a lot of time and money and people to have a team for critical emergencies when there's a client that has crashed and I can't get them up. And that is the emergency response team in all over the world, and they help in extreme attacks. This same team has a second function, second role, that is looking in the internet, exploring, discovering new threats of botnets in the internet. And what I'm telling you now may even sound as ancient news. But in the last 12 years, there has been a dramatic change. I'm going to give you information now. We saw, and I'm thinking of February, it's not so long, 8 months actually. We saw overnight a botnet that we didn't know, and we saw a new botnet with 30,000 IPs I had never seen anywhere. They start attacking sites, CTPs, they attack game providers, and we see what at the time was a world record in terms of capacity, 6.5 teras. 6.5 teras is a lot. I don't know whether you are aware of that amount. It's huge. You can leave out complete countries. Many IX here don't even reach that number. It's a very considerable figure. So I'm going to giving you the detail. It's not. It happens over time, overnight, and it went from 30,000. Almost a week later, it had multiplied to 90,000. And as a matter of fact, it was appeared in the news. One of the victims was Twitter, X. Do you remember? It was Monday in March. X crashed like 6 hours. And I don't know whether to say it ignorant. Elon Musk, I remember that they shouted in the Oval Room with Zelensky, etc. They blamed Ukraine. They said, oh, this attack was planned, orchestrated by Ukraine. Well, he just wanted to blame Ukraine. But the truth is that it hadn't been like that. It is true that it came from this botnet and it was discovered. So finally, what happened with this botnet? Well, basically, at the end, in late August, they discovered there were different news. We tried, this is a clip of the Wall Street where a young guy, 22-year-old, it's too young, was the character behind this botnet. He was capable of creating this and improving it. As a matter of fact, he started even before being old enough to go to university, but he's been attacking the big organizations such as DeepSeek, X-Type. He's generating about 400,000 attacks all over the world, and he attacks directly, and the other is by reselling services. This is fashionable too. Today we're speaking of games. Now there's a market of DDoS, an incredible market, and much of the DDoS has to do with gaming. Now, summarizing this, we are speaking of somebody that was capable of creating a 6.5 tera monster. And I'm about to finish. I don't have any slides because there's a limit time to deliver the slides, but that changes every day. But this botnet was de-articulated, but basically it was reused by another botnet that's called Isuru. The FBI breaks it down, releases the IPs, but another botnet comes behind and says, oh, these IPs have no owner. They're for me. Now let me talk of the second botnet. That's a server botnet that was discovered. It's called Res Hydra. I don't know whether you like the mythology, the Greek mythology, the Hydra, that is the multi-headed snake, 8 of which could be killed. Hercules, for instance, could cut their heads, but he could only kill the snake when he killed the mortal heads with fire, and he finally cut the head with a sword to the one that was working. This botnet, that's a proxy server, we are speaking of a beast, as the one that I was just telling you. This botnet is over 100, has 100 million IPs active. As we speak, they are active, but this has lethal capability over 100 teras. Going back, the IX here know it very well. How much are 100 teras? This super botnet, what it's using is what I said earlier. It's doing the phishing part, fraud, etc., plus attacks as such, and is reusing, as part of its power, is reusing some of the botnets that I told you about, the back botnet, using more than 10 million devices from Android. It's using the Isuru that recovered all the power that it had in botnet. They're using Void. And this is a monster that, as a matter of fact, I don't know whether you've read the news, but today we broke another record, 30 teras. I don't know whether you know games. Other League of Legends is a game. It's a Riot Games, a company in LA. Stream 30 teras today, but this is what appeared in the news. And this is as far as I can read. But we have registered today with this botnet 50 teras. Those 100 teras that I mentioned a second ago, I'm running short. We're going to, and I go back to the same. We have a global problem where every day we are breaking records. So the time comes when integrity is very is in danger. So it's not that my website may clash or Yahoo, but IXP, the largest hubs in the world, and I assume that here there's somebody, 50 teras or 30 teras is much more than I can have in the greatest hubs in Frankfurt, Sao Paulo, whatever. We are speaking of a very dangerous thing. And now, and with this I'll finish. I didn't come here to sell, but unfortunately, not everybody has deep field. These borns today, the only solution that can see them, detect them, and mitigate them is deep field. As deep field client, I would love to have a solution that makes me get protected. If those attacked wouldn't have appeared on the news if they'd had a deep field. So this is the reality with the proxy servers and the real threat that they imply and the course of history. So I'm going to stop here just in case you have questions. Somebody is getting up. I don't know whether they're going to the toilets or they want to ask a question.
Não puedo. Oi, eu sou Douglas do Brasil.
I'm from Brazil. In addition to, in addition to protecting ourselves, trying to mitigate that, what do we have to do to prevent that from continuing to grow? What would be the paths to be followed? I imagine that it has to do with the DNS that were mentioned earlier, IPv6, spoofing. What is your point of view? In your view, what measures should be taken? Let me answer with mythology. Do you remember the snake? How can you kill a snake? By cutting its head. I didn't want to mention any names. I was quite lax giving names. I can tell you that we know who is behind the entire thing. But I can't give a lot of information because when we discover everything, we alert the international agencies, FBI, Europol, Interpol, Wall Street, FBI. The only way you can stop something like this is by cutting its head. This botnet is directly related with the network of proxy servers I mentioned earlier. I said that there were 300 companies, artificial intelligence, the reality. And this is not in the transparencies. I assume that this will appear in the... well, actually, it's limited to one. There's a company, 3 or 4 or 5, that handle the entire business of the proxy service, but basically this is controlled by a company in China. Now, the way we can put an end to this is by cutting the head, but it's very difficult to cut somebody's head when there are so many interests and you don't know what may lay behind. But we can only announce the problem and not the solution. That's a solution that needs to happen with some other agencies. It's not even technical, it's a matter of international organizations capable of testing this and clarifying it. I find that it is even more difficult when we have users that accept to receive money to put a multiplier in their own network. Well, it's the ethics of human beings is yes. In the end, we are all to blame. Many people have never changed a password or have a MikroTik router. I'm sorry if you use that, and they haven't updated for years. I have a password that is 1234. Or I downloaded the Proxies server because I installed this or that. This is everybody's problem. Everybody as users have part of responsibility of what happens at a personal level. Your machines at home, cleaning them and having security at a professional level, trying to, as an ISP, CSP, CSP, or AX, to control something that if you don't start controlling it, it's going to go beyond control. So those 30, 50 teras, those attacks were not directed against Verizon, for instance. But when they change, there's going to be a big problem. And finally, I realize that one of my slides is missing. Now there's an item, and that is that many of the attacks are being done basically for testing. Of the thousands and thousands of attacks every day, the bad guys are testing. Notice that I work in X, the company, and they want to know my secret, my protection. I'm going to receive many attacks, and what they're actually doing is they say, well, here I send a bit less, a bit less, a bit less, until I can guess which is the point where you won't detect me. And from here, it's absolutely fair. Okay. Hello. All right, a round of applause to Roberto. Thank you for the presentation. The LACNOG sessions will resume on Thursday at 9 a.m., but tomorrow we continue with LACNIC at 6:45, LACNIC runners, then the Public Policy Forum, then LACNIC El Salvador, and then the social event. So tomorrow, please don't miss the Public Policy Forum. I'm going to wear my other hat. It's going to be very interesting. Thank you, everybody.